right, so welcome to our latest Blueprints for Success episode. Today I'm with Terry Roach, and he's the CEO of Capsifi, and basically focus on business intelligence, model innovation, cloud hosting, bundling, platforms, you name it, but mostly someone with great knowledge in both enterprise architecture and business architecture, helping people around the world further their business prospects using different tooling and consulting and helping them achieve different results.
Thank you, Deirdre. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation, and I think that's a good summary. The one thing I will correct you on, I used to be the CEO. I founded the business and have been the CEO for 10 years, but a year ago we brought in a new CEO, professional, and I've gone back to doing what I love and do best, which is driving the product vision.
Okay, great. That's good to know because I often say myself that the CEO role is quite difficult because it actually has a lot to do with driving the operations of the business, even though it's not operational in only, but when you have visions around where you want to go and the creative side of things, it's really good to get into that space. So that's really awesome. All right, so let's start with the first thing. Let's talk about your background, a little bit about where you come from. How did you get to where you are today? And then we can take it a little bit further from there.
Okay. I had a long career in IT with large global software vendors in HR, CRM space in particular. And I ended up working for PeopleSoft, which got acquired by Oracle, running their solution architecture practice for Asia Pacific. And basically at that time, I realized that we were coming across a situation where we would be brought in to help organizations automate the way they did things. And we'd be asking them, tell us about your business. How does it function? What do you do? Have you got an operating model written up anywhere? And it was like every single time we asked this question, they'd look around at each other and someone would get on a whiteboard with a blank page and try and draw stuff. And there was just clearly nothing that they had that explained how their business functioned. And this was just massive, big global businesses, time after time in every industry. So it just occurred to me that there had to be a better way. We needed to have our universal template through which we could use to explain all the moving parts of a business. And if everybody had that understanding of what they did, it would just be so much easier to automate things. And I began looking for something like that, a frame. This was sort of in the mid-2000s. Started doing some research into academic sources for something that could be useful to us in our practice, and then just stumbled into an academic career. I got invited to just do, if there's nothing out there, why don't you do something? And I did a PhD in enterprise modeling.
Congratulations. That must have taken a lot out of you.
Yes, and I think the good thing was I had no idea what it was going to entail when I started. But it turned out to be great. I really enjoyed it. And I came up with what became, in academic terms, an enterprise ontology, which is really a concept map.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Very interesting that at the time, the whole concept of knowledge graphs and so on were still really in the infancy. But a knowledge graph is essentially the way that you construct, or the technology used to visualize ontologies. An ontology is really the study of what exists. And basically, the goal was, say, try and build a model of a business, figure out what are all the things you need to consider and how do they all fit together. And that became that fit my mental model pretty well. And soon after that, published that, applied it at the APRA, the financial regulator in Australia, where we're just coming through the financial crisis. And we used this methodology to great success at APRA, but didn't have any tool to put the content into, and just felt this would be an interesting thing to try and build a tool. And well, gradually just evolved from there. And now Capsifi, we didn't ever set out to be an enterprise architecture tool, because that wasn't the goal. The goal was to build a model of a business, an operating model tool. That was really, but after resisting the EA space for about 5 or 6 years, there wasn't really a place where we could get into a Gartner Magic Quadrant, which is the key to success in software. So we showed off our stuff to some of the Gartner analysts who got quite excited, and we got into the Gartner Magic Quadrant for enterprise architecture, which has really probably launched our company as an EA tool now. But really coming from that real heritage of a business architecture first, business top down, understand the operating model. Technology is just one part of it, rather than map out technology and push up to explain how that supports the business, which is probably what most of the other EA tools do.
I think ontology is really a good description. As I mentioned to you, I shift from computer science to philosophy, and that is one of the key learnings around knowledge, is having a good ontology. It's so important, and I don't think people really truly understand what that means in creating businesses and things. It's core business blocks. Yeah.
Totally. I love the philosophical approach, and it was interesting to me that the idea of ontology comes from Plato and Aristotle,
Yes.
who were thinking about the concept of the thing as being distinct from the thing. And we can build these conceptual models of the real world and treat them as, you know, tangible things. And that's what we do with business architecture, essentially. Yeah.
Yes, it is. And that is actually important for architects too. I'm not sure what your opinion on this is, but often what I find is that when I'm training business architects, anyone really, but I always say, even when you're building a house, a blueprint of your house is not a house.
Yes.
It's actually a piece of paper with some words and some pictures on it. But in order to build the house and really have a good design, because it all breaks down to design at the end of the day, you need to understand at a conceptual level first, what is your goal and what you're trying to achieve. But often people think, especially in the digital age, that once you've got this created design that you're working with, it's all real. And I'm going, no, not quite. It's trying to send a message as to where you're going and what you're doing. Yeah, I found that interesting.
I totally agree. It's almost like when we start with mapping out technology as an EA and then trying to use that to explain a business, it's almost like you've gone and taken the plumbing of a house and tried to work backwards to explain what this concept of this house is meant to be. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. I agree with you.
We need to start with the vision, what we're trying to do, why we're trying to do that, how is the best way to achieve it, before we just leap into technology, which is where it all ends up.
I agree. I agree. All right. So the next question I have for you, but I know you've answered some of this. So in your own words, how would you describe the importance and the role of architecture? And I use the term architecture broadly because we can use enterprise architecture as well as business architecture, or any kind of architecture, solution architecture. How would you see the role and the importance of this particular aspect?
I think architecture is a discipline. Okay?
Yeah.
And it brings a disciplined way to thinking about stuff, right? I like the idea that we have structure, that we have patterns, and we have templates, and we reuse we're standing on the shoulders of giants. We reuse well-constructed methods and approaches. And I think architecture is just such a great analogy. You know, they say Zachman used that analogy for first. I'm not sure where it came from, but whoever, you know, it's an obvious analogy of a physical landscaping and architecture to what we do in businesses, which is we try and design something using multiple different diagramming levels, right? And then applying that to this complex thing called an organization. And why that's so great is because most organizations are entirely conceptual. And particularly, for example, financial services. If you think of a bank, there's absolutely nothing physical about a bank. Even their agencies are disappearing. So all a bank is a bunch of people, some computer systems, and somewhere there's some numbers that we all sort of trust and believe in that determines who's got what.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to transform a bank, what are you actually transforming, right? If you don't have a common, universally accepted mental model that you've all agreed on, there's nothing else to transform. The physical people, the way that they work, we show that they don't even have to come into the office. We can all sit at home and work on the end of computer screens and still the bank as such exists and is either successful or not successful. It's efficient or not efficient.
Yeah.
What is it that's actually happening there? If not something really about this conceptual architecture of how it all works.
Yeah.
And that really it comes down to, we often ask people, I call it, we try not to use the word architecture too much, to be honest, because I think it has a little bit of a connotation of a dark art practiced by the high priests in some IT. I think if we want to
It's true.
Yeah, I think all of us would like this to become more universally accepted and to cross the chasm and be more mainstream. We probably have to think of terminology that's less intimidating to non-technical people. So we try and talk about the operating model. Right? We talk about this tangible thing that we all need to agree on, which is how do we operate as a business, and turning that into an asset. A tangible, enduring, incrementally evolving, interactive, dynamic asset that's engaging, that everyone in the business can have access to and get into and get their window into that operating model through the interactive canvases that we try to create. That's the mental model we promote. So when we meet a customer for the first time, I often say, well, where do you keep your operating model today? And you just get blank stares. They're like, we don't even think of such a thing. What is, should we? Oh, yeah, maybe we should. I say, that's your most important asset. Is your operating model. That's the thing that keeps you running. If you haven't materialized that and shared it and got a universal acceptance of it, that you all are talking about the same thing, that everything is connected. When one person changes something over here, there's a ripple effect on everything.
It will, yes.
How are you ever going to manage a transformation of this nebulous organization that nobody can properly describe if you haven't got a common universal view? And that I think is when you make that point to people, it really resonates. And I think that's where we get the aha moment, right? This is more than just mapping out the technology landscape, right? This is about really the essence of who we are and how we operate as an organization.
I think that's so important because we talk about capabilities as architects. And I always say you can build a house with a couple of your mates and hope for the best, or you can get an architect who knows how to structure things and give you a starter for 10, right? I suppose the thing is, a lot of people businesses have had to just figure stuff out along the way. So then the question is, why do we need to architect? We're already running. We already have a business. We're already doing things.
Yeah.
So why would they need architecture if they're already operating?
Well, a great question. The obvious answer is you're operating and you've built something, and it's probably more coincidental than anything else that it's a success. But the fact that it is, congratulations, that's great. You need to future-proof because the world is changing so fast, and you probably will find the rug pulled out from under you quite quickly if you don't
Yes.
build something that is adaptable and that can change. The only constant is change, and so transformation. This became a big buzzword for the past decade. Digital transformation. We need, and I think people just put this word digital in front because it was all about technology. But really, the idea of transformation, to me, it's not really about transforming. What it's about really is building a capacity to continuously transform. Because the world is going to continuously change. You're going to be faced with new markets, new opportunities, or new competitors, and new ways of doing things. And your business will evolve. There's no question about it. So building your business to be able to change. Now, what happens is we end up, why does it become difficult to transform and to adapt? Once something is implemented and in train, right, we start to get bits of, there's knowledge. And in fact, the whole, when we talked about the bank, what is the bank? It's a bunch of knowledge, right? That's, if you say, what's the tangible thing? Knowledge. There's knowledge all over the place in a bank. That's what we have. But the point is that knowledge is so fragmented, disconnected, often in very different levels of abstraction. Everybody has their own myopic view of the bank. That's their perspective, disconnected from anybody else's. That's what ontology does for you. It shows you what that knowledge is and how that knowledge is connected. So architecture actually is about knowledge management. That's what it is. As architects, we are knowledge engineers. We're trying to find how all the moving parts, these moving, and when I talk about knowledge, what do you mean? A process map is a knowledge artifact, an application portfolio, a capability map, a strategy portfolio, your project portfolio, your requirements, user stories, epics. These are all just different knowledge artifacts. They're all connected in one way or another. But understanding that connection is not, it's not obvious, right? It requires the blueprint, the architecture to come and explain how it all fits together, so that when you change something over here, you can sense the ripple effect everywhere else. And which is why knowledge graphs, if we want to go down that direction, then there's knowledge graphs are the best possible way of organizing knowledge for architecture.
I often use the example, the reason why the ancients, let's call them that, could build huge buildings and things like that was because they had libraries, right? And if you look at, let's say, Athens back in whatever century, there were only like 5,000, they only really measured it in males, to be fair, that weren't slaves, but there were only about 5,000 people in the city, which is about the size of an organization today. And they had libraries and things like that. And so I often say, you talk about knowledge graphs and that, those are things that we use as terms today, but the principles are pretty much the same, right? So it's almost like you have to have this catalog and this library of knowledge, but you also got to be able to use it to do things with, and you got to be able to have blueprints and those type of things. And this is why we have buildings that last thousands and thousands of years, because the knowledge got shared and continued to be shared as we went through these different stages. Now, obviously, and this is going to be my segue into what do you see in the future, because obviously with this knowledge we're evolving, we're using things like AI, we're using different technologies, but you still have to think, right? I always say to people, don't think that AI is going to think for you. It will be helpful with many things, but it lacks some creativity. So what do you think, not just architecture, but in your organization, what are you observing, et cetera? And obviously based on your history of the evolution, What do you think the next 5 to 10 years looks like in your profession and with your organization?
Okay, obviously you touched on AI is having a massive impact, and there's just so much opportunity for what AI can do in this space. But I think, to me, what I think that the most profound realization that I've come to recently around AI is that it's really going to become more and more important that the quality of knowledge is going, not just generating knowledge, is going to be the key differentiator. I got really inspired, honestly, by one of your things that you did on a LinkedIn Live a while back, where I watched, fascinated how you constructed a business architecture model using AI. And never seen anyone do anything of its type, and I was really impressed, and I talk about it a lot.
Thank you. I remember you commenting, and I was quite flattered, to be honest.
Well, you deserve it, because it was a very creative thing that you did, and it really opened my eyes a lot to the potential. And so I've actually tried to do some of that myself, right? In your case, what you did, you went and you built a business architecture model for a learning company. And you went and asked you, what are the capabilities? What are the value streams? How do you line the values, the capabilities up under the value stream stages? So I thought we wanted to do some construction of industry models. Okay, and I thought, let me try Deirdre's approach. And we've done that with varying degrees of success. There was one that I did actually that worked really well for a particular industry, and then we tried to do it again for other industries, and it just got progressively worse and worse each time we tried. It's just, we were discovering quite a lot of noise, quite a lot of, firstly, it's challenging to just get to, I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could just come up with a suite of the right prompts and questions, and then just insert different industry, telco, banking, and then pop out identical models. And that's structured thinking. That's how it should work, right? No, you don't get anything like when you try it, because it's going out there and it's just coming up with stuff which is coming from a very different level of, I don't know, baseline of what content is out there in each of those industries, and it produces really different results each time. And so that was a frustration for me. And then the more that I see people producing content from the web in this manner, it just looks to me like it's just, we're going to descend into a level of grayness, because everything just becomes bland, you know, regurgitated mush. There's nothing of any real value. So that means that actually what we need is creative content, and the people that become the sort of artisanal producers of good content are going to become hugely valuable in this world. It's not just go out and point the stuff at the web and expect you're going to get good content. That was one of the very, very big points for me that I discovered. So putting a ring fence around, how do you get access then and generate your own repository of good architecture content? And that's something we're pursuing, and that could have great potential. The other aspect of it is, what do you then do with that, and how do you find ways for people to get value from it? And the obvious ones are the pilot type experience of help people to build models quicker and easier. I find often, wouldn't it be great if we want to, like we talked about crossing the chasm, if you want architecture to be ubiquitous, you need to have a scenario where a non-architect can pick up, go into a workshop and get a canvas, a business, let's say a value stream canvas for that part of their business. Let's say their insurance company is settling an insurance claim. They can just go and open up, get a camp and start a workshop in there, and not have to go through what are the stages, what are the capabilities, how do they map to the people processing.
Yes.
Okay.
We're definitely online there.
Yes, and we need that. We need to get there. And so that idea of a pilot that you could leverage to quickly generate a quality artifact that people can use to get quality outputs in a short period of time. We're a long way from that, and we need to get there and then tooling is a part of it, but method and everything else is there too, and content, right? And then the other end of this, so that's generating the models. The other end of the spectrum, which is very exciting, is then asking questions of the models, right? And again, this is where I think tooling has such an opportunity to contribute, that when you've got all these threads of connectedness, the types of questions, if I do this, what is going to happen? Or what thing should I do? What's the best thing to do to optimize the scenario that I'm in, and so on. We've a long way to go, but for our models to be as robust and holistic and connected and so on, to be able to answer these questions, to truly deliver quality insights, the rigor that we need to apply to modeling has to improve a lot as well.
Yeah.
So I think those are the directions, and also some of the challenges that I think that I see bringing to our space.
Over the last year, basically, that I've been playing with AI, and I have, just as you mentioned, seen some of the evolutions and some of that grayness of what's occurring in that space. What I have discovered is that the principle of architecture first, think of a puzzle piece, right? You need the edges. It's really difficult if there was no boundary to put a puzzle together, right? So if everything was just, it takes a long time, but the minute you have that frame, the rest can be filled in, and that's where AI is really good. And so, but without a good architecture, I really don't think it's reasonable to be able to perform. I honestly, I cannot see, and it goes back to that the knowledge graphs and things that you've been mentioning, but I just cannot see, because the one thing that I realized is that context is so important. AI is, it's like when you do marketing using AI, the stuff it comes up with is, it doesn't have my tone of voice, for instance. It's something that I would never say like that. And it gives me the heebie-jeebies when I read some stuff that it comes up with. And I'm like, hell no. But there are people who use AI almost as I don't know, not even a tool, as a replacement for what they do, and feel that it's good enough, and they haven't actually looked into things. So yeah, it's a really interesting field to be in. And initially people were talking about, you're going to have basically AGI, and it's going to be this amazing thing. And I just don't see any evidence yet. Now, who knows what's going to happen this year, right? But understanding context, it cannot perform without context. And I think this is why they've brought in things like, you've got your now personalized bots and things like that, because of context. It just cannot do it otherwise.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think when you actually learn about how AI works, and you realize that there's no intelligence there at all. It's just putting words together without really even knowing what the words mean. We have to couple that with a real understanding of what the words mean. If we could take that and have the ontology behind it that says this is how all these actually connect, that's what you bring in together of the two, perhaps is going to launch something even more powerful.
Yeah, totally agree. Okay, so my next question to you is, in your current role, what are the key challenges that you're facing? And what are the opportunities that you think will come through this year?
I think, like I've mentioned a few times, this idea of crossing the chasm. So I think that I'll just Jeffrey Moore's book, the bell curve of product adoption. You get these innovators, early adopters, then you get the chasm, and then you get early majority.
Nasty chasm, right?
Exactly. the big bell curve of the early majority, the late majority, and then the laggards, right? And every product goes through this cycle. This is Geoffrey Moore's very insightful position. And the important thing about that is that the first bit represents about 15% of the market. And then you've got 35 in the early majority, another 35 in the late majority. So 70% is sitting here in the big bell, and then another 15 in the laggards. So we are still here. In fact, Wendy did this survey, and I agree totally. We are in the chasm. We have not, and enterprise architecture will never cross the chasm because it's aimed at the high priesthood, who are these guys over on the left here. That's where they want to be. They want this thing to be confusing and erudite that only they could understand, because that's job protection. But we as business architects, we want this thing to be accepted by and used by everybody in the business. We've got to cross the chasm. That to me is the biggest challenge. You say, what's the biggest challenge? How can we make this stuff meaningful and accessible to non-technical people? How can we make them productive, that, as I said earlier, they can go to work in the morning and have a productive meeting in the afternoon, just with a 10-minute understanding of how does value stream work. And I want to just take that thing, understand my end-to-end journey of claim settlement, and I want to put post-it notes to say pain points and ideas and risks, and that's all I want to do. And I don't need to know all the workings that are underneath that make it all happen, but I can interact with that thing. I can capture great quality ideas there. They can become the scope of change and feed into other things. We need to get to a point where architecture is ubiquitously used across an organization by everyone in the business without them needing to be architects. Make that work. That's where
that is a big challenge, and I think it always has been. I think it's improving a lot, especially as the technology starts accelerating and we sit with problems like, what would I call it, shadow systems, technical debt, a whole lot of things that we weren't expecting. And now we've got, who termed the term? Oh yes, Pierre, when I interviewed him, he used the term monuments. We left with all these monuments that we don't really know what to do with. So it is a real challenge being able to architect things that we can use and things that we need to have and work with and use the technology, so we're not ending up with all this debt, this technical debt. And people don't realize how much the technical debt costs. We know how quickly we go through laptops and cell phones and things like that. And often people don't realize it's a problem in business too. It's just longer, it takes longer, but that's going to accelerate as technology accelerates. They're going to want more features because they have to be competitive. They have to be able to work with different industries. Customers are demanding things from them that maybe they didn't. So absolutely, they need to have some kind of way in which to answer these questions really quickly. At least that's so. This takes me to the next question, which is, what tools, techniques, things you think people will need moving into the future, and maybe just 2 or 3. What are the key things that they would require?
One of the interesting things, as a tool vendor, we go through evaluations for our product, and well, I suppose the buyers of these technologies, they are clearly trying to do the right thing and be diligent about making sure that the product they buy has the potential to do all these amazing potential things they might want to do down the track. And so we go through the evaluation process, and they're asking us to prove all these incredibly advanced features and techniques that they think that they're going to potentially need. And then sometimes we get through and we're successful and they pick our product and we get started with them. And then we really get to see where they're at and what problems they're trying to solve. And it's invariable, Deirdre, that they are so far from that vision that they had been projecting. They're doing very basic things. Very small improvements have massive impact. And so to me, I think that business architecture, to me, the capability map, but more importantly, the value stream, which is putting capabilities into context, those two artifacts in and of themselves are so fundamentally important. We really just need that. Yeah. And if we just can teach the world the value of a value stream canvas and how an interactive version of that, where you can click through, peel the onion, see what's behind it, but also just heat map it, put your post notes onto it, use it as a workshopping tool to just get it, because what it does is builds a common vision of this is the thing that explains how this part of business works. I often say we get a lot of times we're going through a discussion with a potential customer and they'll be going, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to successfully justify this product and so on. How do I sell this internally? How am I going to? I always say, my suggestion, don't even think of the tool, just tool, because they're talking to us, we're tool. But go find the guy or the girl who's running the most topical initiative at the moment in your business and go and look over their shoulder and look at what they're looking at. And I bet you, firstly, two things. One, they're a business person who's probably not done something like that before. They're the business owner, they're trying to do some transformation, they haven't really got a great idea of how to do it, and they've gone to the project team and they're looking at a roadmap. I bet you that's what we've got in front of them. They've jumped straight to delivery and they're trying to work out schedules and resource allocations and budgeting according to that. And then go and show there's a one-to-one relationship between an initiative and a value stream. That's one of the epiphanies we had. There's almost always, you will not have an initiative impacting more than one value stream. So identify what value stream that initiative is functioning on. Go and find one or draw one up yourself or figure it out and go and give that person that canvas and say, this is what we're transforming. Why don't we all huddle around this instead of the roadmap? Because then we can look at a heat map and say, where are the bottlenecks? Where are the maturity gaps? Where are the opportunities for change? And suddenly we will have a much better way of us deciding priorities, how to spend the best money, the best investment, the best allocation of our investment, the timing and so on of this thing, which is the roadmaps are going to teach you that. If we could just insert this thing in this canvas into that work stream, the world's transformation initiatives would improve dramatically. And that I think is the only technique we need to offer.
This is why I agree with you, Terry, because what I realized, again, with AI, but not just AI, was when you've come from a business analysis background, as I have, and I moved out of that, like I mentioned, in about 2009, 2010, but then I came back, and you always bring it back into what you're doing. One of the things that I realized that a value stream is really helpful for solutions requirements. And not user stories per se, although they can cross-map really well to a value stream. But the reason why that matters is because, just as you've said, take it back a part, just take it back one step and go, actually, your solution starts with a value proposition. And it's not the business model canvas. It's something a little bit more practical, but light. And cross-map your requirements, whether they be user stories or some other form of requirements, to your value stream and see what you get. Because the gaps are going to become so obvious. It'll take a while though, like depending on how long you take and what. This is where the tooling bit came in for me, because you can speed that process up, and I think that's what I demonstrated in that video in the beginning. But you still have to have an architecture to really get that right. And but the value stream is super helpful in requirements, and particularly the solution requirements. And people have separate conversations around that. So I 100% agree with you. I've seen it in both industries. You either go straight into, okay, hurry up, guys, run a Kanban board and you can just get it all done, and why isn't it working? And then you just end up again with all that shadowware, the technical debt, the time wasting, and so forth. So I think we're on the same boat there when it comes to looking at that as an option. I always say to people, though, with value streams, make sure you at least can back it up with some capabilities, because otherwise it's just ideas and it's not a solid architecture. All right. So last question I have for you. Can you share some advice or lessons learned for professionals entering their career? And what I really want to understand here, like if you had to go back to your younger self, there's Terry stepping out of, I don't know, uni, let's say, and you could tell your younger self what you would change or what you would do differently, what would that be? And let's stick to the work bit, because I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you tell yourself, like I would.
I think what I would tell myself is that the world is changing so fast that what you do today is unlikely to be what you do tomorrow. Like you said to me before we came online, your first degree you did in computer science, and then you went off and did philosophy. And I love that, because I think that's what we need to do. We need to bring lots of different diverse perspectives to solve problems, but problems will always change. I've got 4 boys, and we see them going through their life struggling with these monumental decisions of what am I going to be in my life. And I don't think it's the same as it perhaps was a long time, even 30, 40 years ago, where you had a career forever. I feel like our careers and our what we contribute to the world is, if we just take the approach of just living in the moment and bringing the combined skills and learning how to be collaborative teams, cross-functional teams, as you explained, maybe pinching that word from these agile ways of working, but the thought that we can just come together on projects, work together, bring different perspectives, bring ideas and techniques and apply them to problems, and then move on and do that same model in other places. This is what really changed in the way work is done today. And that's amazing. It's productive, it's efficient, and it's so much better, I think. So if I was to go, I think my advice to myself way back would be, don't get too hung up on thinking too far into the future, because the future changes so quickly. Just think about being the best you can be right now in the space that you're in. Yeah.
I think that's really good advice. I think being responsive to the opportunities and having certain skills, however you acquire them, is good. Like, for instance, you might go, hey, I want to dabble with X, even though this is what I was doing, because you never know if the two are going to come together. You just never know if there's going to be a convergence between the two different careers that you didn't even think would happen. I do think some of them, though, like if somebody wants to be a doctor, yeah, go for it. I'm pretty sure you're going to be needed in the future. I think in the technology sphere, though, it's so fluid. And I suppose, Terry, you and I'm not letting out anyone's ages, so let's just blanket it, right? But it was even cowboy back in the 90s, early 2000s, right? And you just had to figure it out as you got along. There were no answers. It was just like, oh, now this has happened. And when you look at, let's say, the AI and the various things that are happening, which are exciting, you're just going to have to figure it out. It's not going to be landing on your lap. Everyone's still learning. So you just have to be a lifelong learner, really.
Exactly.
And look at that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I learned in in my career in large, complex organizations is that there's a high degree of incompetency, unfortunately, and people pretending that they know stuff. That everybody's just shooting from the hip and making it up as they go along, and oftentimes very badly. But I think what I discovered when I went through my academic pursuit, and I was having to try and come up with something that was going to be insightful, innovative, new, and so on. What was so exciting for me about ontology is that you can't lie. It's a reflection of the world. And so when I was trying to build a ontology of an enterprise, it was, once I had a kind of framework of thinking, is it this, is it that, you're figuring out how to categorize things, you suddenly realize it was a process of discovery, not invention, right? And that was amazing, because then you can always go back to it's just the truth. You're not telling anybody that this is anything other than the way the world is from how it's revealed itself, not that you've imposed anything onto the world. And if you can get to that point where you're building up your ontology from the perspective of truth, the way the things are, then you're always in you have a level of confidence to be able to keep pursuing that truth and making it cleaner, better, more efficient, more optimized. That's what I think architecture, ontology, these topics bring to the world of business optimization. Yeah.
I think we'll agree on that. All right. In closing, I just want to thank you again for spending your time with me. How can people get in touch with you best, Terry?
My company is Capsifi, www.capsifi.com, and LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, Terry Roach, and you'll find me there. And if anybody to chat about these topics, as you can see, I'm quite passionate and I love to talk about it. And very welcome to do it. And Deirdre, thank you for this opportunity. It's been really lovely to talk to you, and I'm in awe of what you've achieved, and I'm wishing you the very best in promoting these topics as you go.
Thank you. I really do appreciate that. So that's Terry, everybody. I hope that you've enjoyed the conversation. Please keep in touch, make your comments, do all of those normal things. And I'm sure we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Deirdre.